Hi, my name's Ian Puddick. I thought I'd make this video as a bit of fun, really. Tomorrow, you're going to receive a text message on your mobile phone, unless you've obviously turned off the ability for your phone to receive emergency cell broadcasts. The reason I made the video is, I believe it or not, and obviously I don't expect everyone to believe this, but I actually started this back in 2010. So the reason you're receiving a text tomorrow, I don't want to say is my fault, because I haven't made it happen. Other people have made the decision to send you this text, but I'll explain why that's happened. So in 2010, I wrote to the Cabinet Office, because I can't remember if I'd seen it online or I'd read it in a newspaper, but I'd seen somewhere about, they were discussing the 7/7 bombings in London. And what they were saying is that in an emergency, the government, in theory, can shut down all of the mobile phone networks, the masts, in a given area. So, for example, if there was an incident, a landmark, I'm not going to start mentioning names and places and all that kind of stuff, start frightening people. But if there was an explosion in London somewhere at a certain place or a location, the government can actually turn off, in theory, where they've got the ability to do that, to communicate and coordinate and make that happen. Trust me, from my experience and everything I've heard, there's no way that they could. But if they wanted to shut off all of the mobile phone networks or masts in that given area, so that no one can set off secondary bombs using mobile devices, they have the power, in theory, to do that under the Civil Contingencies Act, because the government has a legal obligation to communicate with you, the public, in a crisis. Not that government has the best of communications, you probably may all know. So I wrote to them. So I wrote to the Cabinet Office and said, "Did you know?" Remember, I run a plumbing company. So this isn't my bag. It's sort of a little bit my bag, but it's not really my day-to-day job anymore. So I wrote to them and said, "Did you know that you can communicate with the public by sending them a text alert in a crisis with the mobile phone networks shut down or turned off?" So if you're on Vodafone or Cellnet, the old Cellnet, Orange and One2One and all these old phone companies, Vodafone, if you're with them and Virgin goes down, Vodafone goes down, BT goes down, they're all turned off for the government, there is a facility that will enable you to receive a text message even though your phone has no signal. So I wrote to them and said, "Look, can I just tell you how you do that in a crisis?" Because the government was saying that in a crisis we can't do that, and I was saying, yes, you can, even with the networks down. So that's how it all started. So I got invited to the Cabinet Office, and I prepared this presentation to them. So at the time, my initial introduction was to the Cabinet Secretary. He's the most senior civil servant in Great Britain, a guy called Sir Gus O'Donnell. He passed me on to the Civil Contingencies Directorate that manage all internal government communications with the public in a crisis. So I got to present to them. So I turned up at the Cabinet Office for the first meeting. I brought Pete and Simon with me. I'll post a picture of that up in this. This is our first meeting outside the Cabinet Office. I think we were holding a mug. We were opposite the Cabinet Office in a pub. We went for a coffee before the meeting, just to have a sort of a little chat before we went in. And got loads of good stories about what happened in the Cabinet Office. And so I stood up and explained to them. I told them how to do it. And the Civil Contingencies Directorate's manager, the guy who was in charge of the whole programme of communicating with the public in a crisis, said to me, "Look, I don't want you to give away any commercial secrets." I said, no, listen, we're here. We're not making any money out of this. We're just going to tell you what to do and how you can do it. And which they obviously not used to. So they didn't quite grasp it. But we explained it and made it very clear to them how they can do that in a crisis. Phone networks off, you can communicate with people by sending them a text, which means you fulfill your legal obligation to communicate with the public in a crisis. So, did the presentation, explained it to them. They all made lots of notes. There was a lady there from the Home Office who worked for MI5. She was there asking lots of questions. They were just gobsmacked, had no idea that they could do this. In that meeting, we discussed text alerts. So the government could send text alerts out in a crisis. Now, there are laws that stop prevent this from happening. So, for example, if you ever wonder why your phone isn't bombarded with messages from BA, Virgin, McDonald's, Dell Computers, Disney, and all the companies that you can imagine why they're not texting you with special offers and discount codes and all that. It's because there's laws preventing them. Now, in other countries, they do that, believe it or not. But over here, we don't do that. I won't go through the legislation, but the reason you don't receive text alerts from advertisers is because there's laws to protect you. So I then get a message about 2 weeks later saying, can you come back and do that presentation again to the Cabinet Office? Yeah, of course, yeah. Bit of a privilege, really, to get invited to the Cabinet Office, especially to talk to them about something that they should know, that they should be doing, that they didn't know. So it was fun. It was, good fun. So we turned down, same people, 2 more people at the table. I won't say where they were from. And they were really interested in this. So I explained to them how you do this. So this isn't a hypothetical process. This isn't me saying, I reckon you could tweak this and adjust that and you might be able to achieve that, telling you exactly how to do it. It's very simple, by the way. So it would be if it's coming from me anyway. And lo and behold, we have the meeting. Lots more questions, lots of interesting questions. I was able to address all the issues that they had. And they said, we might need you to come back again. Would that be all right? I said, yeah, no problem at all. I'm very happy to help. So get invited back again about 2 months later. But before I went, the chap at the Cabinet Office rang me and said, look, he said, we trust you, we believe you. I mean, you're very confident. You seem to know what you're talking about. He said, but we've spoken to BT, we've spoken to Vodafone, and they've explained exactly why it can't be done. So that was really interesting. So BT and Vodafone were, and I think they still are. So BT definitely are the main provider for communications for the Cabinet Office. There are other small aggregators and other small companies that are involved in that, but BT as a provider provide the military and government in the UK with all their communications. And they said it couldn't be done. So I said, well, bring them to the meeting and I'll tell them exactly how to do it, as you've seen many times. He said, yeah, they won't come. I said, well, can I speak to them on the phone? No, they won't speak to you. I said, well, that's just nonsense. Anyway, so I can get invited to, I went to quite a lot of meetings, kissed lots of frogs, just told lots of people the same thing, because obviously the message can't change. The instructions on how to achieve the objective and how to do it don't change. So I was just repeating the same thing to lots of different people in different government departments. And finally they grasped it, because what I did was in 2004, I broadcast the Queen's Christmas message globally on the mobile phone system. So, for example, obviously you can hear the Queen's Christmas message on Christmas Day, and it's broadcast on either ITV or BBC. I think Sky now do it. It was just the BBC and ITV when I got the contract to do that. But I put it on the mobile phone network so that people could listen to the Queen's Christmas message literally live. So it was a recording, obviously, but whenever you called, you listened right from the start, and wherever you were on the planet, you'd always hear that. And also there was a couple of buttons at the end, so you could press 1 for you like the message, 2 you didn't like it, or whatever, and they could get some feedback and some stats to see what people thought of the idea of broadcasting the Queen's Christmas message, and it was very successful. Now, Vodafone had made a huge issue saying, no, he's talking nonsense. There's no way that he could do this. But in 2000, sticking my head out now, so I'm golden older. I think it's 2004, same year, Vodafone had to announce the world's biggest corporate loss. I think it was about 18 billion. So how are they going to announce that? And here's the rub. Here's the issue. This is the communications issue that Vodafone had, was they had to communicate the next day and announce this huge loss at the stock exchange. And obviously it was going to affect the share price. They were worried about staff retention. They didn't want senior people working throughout Vodafone. I think it had 154,000 employees around the world. And they didn't want key staff waking up thinking, hang on, I'm working for a company that's not going anywhere soon. It's going downwards. I need to jump ship. I need to get out of here. So key retention of key figures was really important to Vodafone. That was one of the messages they gave me. And I came up with the idea of, just like we've done for Buckingham Palace, do a recording literally sit down with the chief exec. Remember, we had to do this at night because the next morning I got this call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon saying, "Can you help?" I said yes. I was down at Vodafone's headquarters by about 7 o'clock. About 10 o'clock in the evening, we had hired Bruno Brooks's, the former Radio 1 DJ. He's got some studios in Newbury. And we had the chief exec, Sir Christopher Gent, and Sir Julian Horne-Smith, the chief operating officer, in there. And we did a little recording. And we had a guest in there, but I'll mention that in a separate video explaining this is really about the Cabinet Office. And I'm now digressing because I talk too much. But we did a recording. We made a little recording explaining that Vodafone had not made a loss. They'd made record profits on every parameter of the business, or every area of the business. Their sales were up, their profits were up. But why this huge loss? It was an accounting thing. It wasn't a real cash loss. It was an accounting loss. And Sir Christopher Gent was able to do that. We were able to broadcast that using the cell broadcasting technology that we was trying to explain to the cabinet. So Vodafone had used their own technology. Actually, they didn't. It's another story for another time. They didn't. It's a great story. Long, yeah. So anyway, I'm sort of to blame for what happened with the Cabinet Office. So they, why did not, people said to me, well, people that know me said, well, why didn't you get the contract? Well, listen, it's just me. There was a few of us. The only people that are able to handle a UK cell broadcasting program and manage it on a day-to-day basis are huge organisations, not me. And yeah, Vodafone, BT are now in the running for that. So you'll get your text tomorrow. So I hope it all works well for you. I hope you get a nice message. No one's monitoring you, but all the data is going to be stored. And there's on the data capture from all the text that you're going to get tomorrow, there's another story of what happens to that, good and bad. If you want some more information on me making some videos on things that I've been involved in, I'm very happy to talk. You can let me know. I talk a lot, as you can see. Thank you for listening. But I thought it might help people understand, why am I getting a text from the government? Where the hell did this come from? Unfortunately, it was me. And now I make gin. Lucky me. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.